Everyone, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for joining me today. So today I'm going to be looking at 5 active learning strategies to help engagement and increase motivation with your students. So if you're interested in this topic, then please keep on watching. Okay, so this week I'm going to be talking about 5 different active learning strategies. And the reason why I want to focus on active learning in terms of being able to move around the classroom is because last year I actually suffered a really bad injury in my back. And I think that's because of posture and sitting down for long periods of time. So I have a new mantra in my life: sitting is the new smoking. And now I really focus on using a standing desk. You'll see that I'm standing up now and standing wherever possible so that I'm really protecting my posture. So, how in the classroom can we encourage our students to move around and not just be passively sitting down in the classroom for hours and hours and long periods of time? So, my first strategy is, of course, to use vertical non-permanent services. So, we can have different prompts around the room. We can have groups of 2 or 3 in terms of our students. They can be discussing, collaborating, and trying to problem solve or try to look at a particular prompt at the vertical non-permanent surface so that they're actually standing up. I was in an absolutely wonderful lesson the other day. It was an English language and literature lesson, and the teacher was focusing on when to use the comma. There is not just a set of rules that we follow with commas, because sometimes there's poetic license. And so students were in groups of 3 and they were given lots of different sentences, and students had to put in the comma where they thought was appropriate and was the intention of the meaning of the sentence. And after they actually put the commas in, groups were then asked to come up with different rules to follow of when to use the comma. I thought it was such a beautiful lesson. Not only was it demonstrating active learning, it was also reflecting inductive learning, showing students specific examples of a concept that you want them to understand, and then really encouraging students to generalize from those specific examples. So my first active learning strategy is to use vertical non-permanent surfaces or just any vertical surface, maybe with a poster, and students can collaborate and write their ideas at the vertical surface. Now, my second strategy is to ask students to go and find a partner. So how are they going to find a partner? One way that I like to use is if you've got 20 students in your class, then everybody is given a number or they shout out a number. So you can use that game where everyone has to shout out a number, but if 2 people shout out the same number, then you have to start with that number again. So everyone has a number. Let's say you have 1 to 20 in your class. And then you can say, go and find your partner so that your number and your partner's number add up to 21. So we're going to have pairs of 1 and 20, 2 and 19, 3 and 18, etc. You're going to have 10 groups, and basically every group will add up to 21. So that's a really quick, easy way for students to find their partner in the room and then to discuss a prompt. And that leads me to my third active learning strategy, which is about utilizing visible thinking routines in an active way. Let's say they've found their partner. What are they going to discuss? So I think the visible thinking routine prompts are absolutely wonderful to be able to share metacognitive thinking and for students to share their learning. So my third strategy is to use the visible thinking routines and encourage students to get up and go and share their responses to a visible thinking routine with someone else in the room. Now, my fourth strategy is to have stations. I was in a classroom last week and I loved how they approached the stations. Normally, what we do with stations is we'll have 4 or 5 stations in the classroom and groups rotate after 5 minutes. But instead of having such an overly structured approach, I loved what this kindergarten teacher did in the class last week. She said to students, you've got these stations. He explained what the stations were. Now go and choose a station. So each student was allowed to give agency and ownership over their learning by choosing the station that they wanted to go to. And then once you've finished with that, once you've had enough of that station and you've played around with the different resources there, you can just move freely when you're ready. You would think that this would be so chaotic, but it was so organized. And these were 4-year-olds. So 4-year-olds were choosing a station to go and play at. Once they'd finished playing, they moved on to another station by themselves. So I love that idea of giving students more agency by allowing them to choose the station they want to go to and spend amount of time that they think is appropriate rather than us dictating how long each group should be at a particular station. So my fourth strategy is to have stations, but really give students ownership and agency by allowing them to choose which station to start off with and when to move to the next station. And then my fifth one, of course, is the gallery walk. So let's say you've given your students a prompt at the vertical surface. And of course, we want to encourage students to look at each other's answers. It's not cheating. In fact, Peter Legerdale in Building Thinking Classrooms calls it knowledge mobility. So I think we need to kind of reframe our thinking in terms of how students share their work. So having a gallery walk and asking groups to actually go around and have a look at the different responses from the class. I very often like to use the gallery walk as, why don't you go and check your answer with the other groups and see if your answers align or see if your thinking is similar. And then you can compare your answers and your thinking and your working out with other groups. And that's really important. That's the power of knowledge mobility. It is so important that we don't tell students something that they can actually tell each other. So they're the 5 different strategies for encouraging more active learning in your classroom. The first one is using vertical surfaces. It could be permanent or non-permanent. The second strategy I talked about was finding a partner, and you can just ask each student to shout out a number. If you've got 20 students, you're going to have 1 to 20. And if you've got 30 students, there'll be 1 to 30, but it's always going to add up to 31. You're going to find your partner that adds up to 31 or it adds up to 21. However many students you've got, plus 1 more. The third strategy was to always ask students to share their visible thinking routine responses with each other in the classroom. The fourth strategy was allowing students to choose which stations to go to and when they should move on to the next station. The fifth strategy is encouraging a gallery walk where we're utilizing that idea of knowledge mobility. So thank you so much for joining me this week. If you've got other strategies that you'd like to share about how we can encourage more active learning, then please feel free to put it in the comment section below. And I really hope to see you next time. Bye.